Good evening, everyone. It is 6:08 p.m. This is the regular business meeting of the Smithfield Township Board of Supervisors. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Members present include myself, Chair Jacob Pride, Vice Chair Robert Levenheim, Supervisor Michael Albert, Solicitor Ron Karasak, Engineer John Tressler, Township Manager Julia Heilicke, Administrative Coordinator Diana Salvi, and Conservation and Recreation Director Dr. Alex Jackson. First order of business are two sets of minutes. We have the April 17th, 2024 Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission joint session and the April 24th regular meeting of this Board of Supervisors. You guys had a chance to look at those sets of minutes?
And you will not have the ones from the 24th.
Okay.
It's just the 2017th, right?
Yeah, just the joint session. Do I hear a motion on item A under the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Albert. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do I hear a motion to table item B under minutes?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Albert. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Levenheim. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, a couple of announcements. There's a standing executive session this evening from 5:30 p.m. to about 6:07 p.m. regarding personnel and legal strategies. There was also an executive session on May 1st from 5:39 p.m. to 6:42 p.m. regarding personnel matters. There will be a Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission joint session once more on May 15th at 5 p.m. here. That's also to continue the lodging definitions as well as other business. Our spring cleanup is from May 15th through 18th, 8 to 5 here at the Municipal Center. See our website for more information on that or chat with us. And finally, community garden pots are available through May 22nd. Sign up via Administrative Coordinator Diana Salvi, who is here. She has our information. Okay, we have bills and obligations for today, $441,768.69. The majority of that is coming from the general fund, and then we have significant expenses from the Capital Improvement Grant Fund. Note the leaf truck per the Act 101, Section 902 grant, and Green Light Go via the Green Light Go grant. And that was already reviewed by TNM. So all set on that. Do I hear a motion on the bills?
Motion to approve the bills.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Albert. Any questions?
Yes.
Okay, Christine?
The 441, that's a big number. What's included in that?
Well, that's exactly what I just said. The leaf truck per the Act 101, Section 902 grant and the Green Light Go.
Leaf truck was 100,000, and the Green Light Go was 80,000. So that's makes up shy of half of them. And those were approved months ago.
I thought the leaf truck was only gonna be 30,000.
No, that's the match. So the actual cost is reimbursed to us. So you typically have to outlay the funds and then you get your funds back. Yep.
So this is the outlay part.
This is how much we're paying, not, we already received grant revenue for that.
Got it, so that's 120,
Yeah. Anything else to add, Julia?
and then the difference is what? Ballpark, or, you know?
So we applied for the grant for $305,000. That portion that is a grant is going to be $274,000, and the remaining 30-ish is the township's obligation. So once we actually have the check stating, yes, we purchased this equipment, we go to reimbursement and we'll get that money back.
So that 300 is in the 441, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 180 plus 140 plus 90 includes,
The general fund is 257. That is a fairly typical month, including a couple extra things like the lumber is a little bit more expensive.
final payment on the Marshall's Falls is in there.
Right, and that's also per
And
grant.
the light leaf vacuum is
So-
part of theirs in there too.
It's not really a different month except for the added reimbursables.
There's $2,000 in landscaping for the different parks. That's the only other big one that goes
Is
with.
there, and I've brought this up before, but I don't, is there a way for us to see, like, the list of?
It's actually not public. It's actually not public knowledge until it's been voted on.
Until after the fact? Really? Okay.
Is that right?
So then
Correct?
after the fact.
Is that right?
then-
So some of this, we can't just release it because there is redactable information on here. So it will need to be gone through after the fact. We can't just get this out.
Right,
That's what- Yeah.
right. Okay, so that's why, so last time I asked, it was suggested that I go through a right to know process for it, so and that's.
Correct, because I mean, for example, some of these bills, if there are, legal invoices are going to detail exactly what was worked on, so if it's a personnel thing, we have to redact that by law.
Sure,
So things like that,
sure, okay,
not necessarily the trash, but, you know, other stuff.
right. Is there a way that, is there like a happy medium? Where we could get some kind of detail, like some level of detail on that at the
You
meeting?
could potentially get numbers, but that's really what some municipalities do. I've seen other boroughs and townships do that, but that's That's
I'm
probably-
unclear of what you're referring.
what I'm saying is East Stroudsburg and Mount Pocono, and I think a couple other municipalities I've seen, they publish like the check number and exactly what it is for, but again, that would have to be redacted, so there would be still somewhat of a process. Maybe there's a happy medium, but it's something that we'll have to look into.
And that's something that they do before the meeting, they print
Yes.
the checks before the meeting.
Yes. Correct, they're ready to be signed. They're there, so,
So does that, that seems in contradiction to what Michael just said, though, that is.
No, I was saying you can't have, like, this document that I'm looking at right now is not public,
Right, got it.
right?
correct, so
It can't be
there's
shared.
potentially less detail, but you know, this. Gets into personnel stuff, you know, one of the line items I'm looking at right now is directly into, you know, someone's personnel matters. So like, something like that you can't see, but we could say the swing hangers for swings at Minnesink Park, you know, if we give you that, but other stuff would still have to be
Right,
redacted. Employees may or may not get Cobra, you know, for example, and so we're not gonna disclose, you know, who that is, things of that nature.
right. Is that something that could be discussed amongst yourselves to?
Yeah,
I mean, it might be possible.
Reach that happy medium?
And again, it's yet another, maybe that's something body can do.
yeah, potentially,
And maybe it's just a question of like, built this heading,
yeah.
key expenses.
Like legal expenses, landscaping fees.
Unfortunately, it's not how it's formatted right now. I mean.
It's not formatted like that in any case, it's in alphabetical order by the vendor and then in by date and invoice number.
So it would be some work to do it. I guess the other question is like, we don't have like, summarized P and Ls online or something like that. We don't have. profit
No
loss.
places. do
I
that.
know, I see,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm just asking.
I mean, the county does certain things, so we can take a look, there's something, I mean. Tell you exactly what any of these things are, that's why I say, you know, they're questions, but.
Okay, thank you.
You know,
Yeah,
Thanks.
alright. All in favor?
uh,
Okay, we'll proceed to reports and we'll proceed first to the solicitor's report. I know there's some items to report from last night, potential future steps, et cetera, that might be good for the public to
Okay, and
hear about.
we will get to those in due course. My general report is that, I attended 2 Board of Supervisors meeting, 1 planning commission meeting. I also attended, 2 public hearings, 1 for the Healthy Minds Treatment Center and 1 for the M Manor Holdings matter. Along with preparing a list of possible conditions in the Healthy Minds matter and preparation of the township's brief supporting the township's position in the Mountain Manor matter. The township was again successful in yet another lawsuit where the discontinuance of the Shawnee Valley Owners Association lawsuit was discontinued from the court. House records, and the case was stricken from the October 2024 trial list.
Which one was that?
The Shawnee Valley Association versus the township for dealing with the 2005 Shawnee Valley PRD.
Oh, right,
That case. is
right, of
now-
course, that which we've talked about, okay.
Yes, yeah,
You
discontinued.
said the PRD, I thought I meant the other one, okay.
Their receipt, review, and inspection of new applications and plans, including the invalidity of ordinance number 238. Dealing with the approval of the substance abuse center in the R1 zone. The conditional use application for 133 Worthington Avenue. The Franklin Hill Manor had an updated plan, and Ministerial Retreat filed a sketch plan. And finally, I provided to Dr. Jackson information regarding Township Resolution number 392, 2016, which was a voters referendum for open space. And with respect to the matter involving the Healthy Minds case. According to the information that I have, and I'm looking at the meeting minutes from the last meeting, the record on that case closes today. That means the 45 days begins to run for me to write an opinion. You need to set this up for a decision at a supervisor's meeting, and you can't give me a decision 3 days before 45 days.
Well, you got, so you
Right
have the
now, I
briefs
have
now.
5 decisions to
No,
write.
the question is, we were waiting for the briefs.
So the briefs have come in.
Well, I didn't get them.
Okay, well, I'm not sure who they sent them to, but I got briefs.
Okay.
Yesterday and today.
Take this up again.
I didn't get a copy of the brief, so I need a
So
copy of the
let's-
briefs, you gotta make a decision.
Yeah,
When are we
Okay.
gonna take this up again? Which meeting?
and it seems prudent to discuss it on the 22nd,
The next
our
meeting,
next
yeah.
meeting.
I
That way
wanted,
there's
I wanted 2
sufficient lead
weeks with the briefs, so if I can get the briefs today.
Yeah.
Do you have copies, Julia?
I believe they did show up yesterday. I have not taken any action with that email yet, but.
Okay.
I believe one was filed yesterday and an amended one was filed today.
Okay.
So they just came in, all right.
Yeah, they just came in.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
we received one of them at 4:22 yesterday
Okay.
afternoon.
Alright.
You'll have them shortly.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
If you want to not do it at the end of May, because again, I may have a continuing saga in Bangor Borough with a zoning case that's just going crazy. You may want to just do it for your June meeting, because I can file the decision. The 45 days runs June 22, which is a Saturday, which then would jump to Monday, June 24.
First meeting,
Even if I have a decision in early part of June, that gives me enough time to write the decision.
Well,
our first meeting is not till the 12th, though.
I'll be going after June 20th for once, so.
Okay, well, if it's June 12th, it's June 12th, that's, you know, I got 2 weeks to get it done. So, and if that's what it is, you can put it on for the 27th or the
So we
22nd.
know that the opposing counsel was available for that meeting.
No, they don't need to be there.
They don't need to be here.
We didn't ask for argument.
No, just like last night, you have other attorneys didn't have to be here, you made your decision and that's that.
All right.
So, I mean, that's, I can double
You can
check.
do it at any time then. What's the?
You can do it at any time.
Why
Are
don't
we
we?
allowed to can we discuss it on the 22nd, what's our next meeting?
22nd.
But issue the decision on the 12th?
You can do that.
Can we do that?
45 days begins to run as of today.
That way we can discuss in public forum and that,
So we'll add that too.
okay.
And then with respect to the 133 Worthington Avenue, we need to get that advertised and a
They
hearing
just
held.
withdrew that
Well, they withdrew it.
just today.
Okay, well, then that's good. Then we don't have to worry about that because my concern was we had to have the hearing by June 4th.
Right.
And advertise, et cetera. Okay, so that's the update that I have here. Now, you said you want to talk about last night.
Yeah, could you briefly just sum up the result of the procedure and what potential next steps look like, how it's not exactly going to close tomorrow,
No,
et cetera.
the zoning board rendered their decision saying that the track was not proper for a number of reasons, and I won't get into those reasons right now. With that decision, now Mr. Durney has 45 days to write a written opinion as to that decision. The reason for that written opinion is that a court, if an appeal is filed, has to have something in writing to know why did the zoning board do what they did?
Right.
Not just rely upon some motion being made by a zoner who may not have any legal training or knowledge, but give me a written legal opinion as to why the zoning board did what it did. So that has to be done in 45 days. I don't think if this township would do anything within that period that a court would listen. The court's gonna say, wait a minute, I first have to have that written decision to know why they did what they did. Now, let's get now to that 45-day window, the written decision comes down. I would be shocked if Mountain Manor doesn't appeal that decision to the common pleas court. It goes to a county court now for a judge to decide. And the Mountain Manor people can file a petition for a stay and say, Judge, I want the decision stayed. I don't want to have to shut down until such time as you make a decision as to whether we win or whether we lose. Now, if a judge grants that stay, then it's stayed. If they file an appeal and don't request a stay, which I would be shocked, but if they don't, well, the township could then possibly go in and request an injunction and say, we want the process to stop, because even though they've appealed, they haven't filed for a stay. And
Right.
the zoning board decision was against them.
How long does the judge take to issue a decision on whether the stay is approved or
The
not?
stay is pretty quickly.
And is it guaranteed? You file it?
No, it's not guaranteed. You
They
gotta,
look at some of the
you
evidence.
gotta
that was-
convince the judge that there's a good reason as to why the stay should be in effect, et cetera.
And when someone files an appeal, you can move to quash the appeal also, right? Although it's,
If there's a basis to quash,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're filing an appeal with the common pleas court.
Yeah.
And the appeal should be with the zoning board, well, yeah, you can then file an appeal, quash with.
So Ron, you're saying that if they file an appeal and they don't file for a stay, we can still start fining them?
I don't think you can start finding them, but I think you can go in for an injunction. I think you could, but I would be shocked if they're not gonna file for a stay. I mean, what are they gonna say? We're gonna appeal, but you can shut us down? I would be surprised if that's what they would do.
at least it's a point on our end, but we're prepared for.
And if there is an
legal action.
appeal and if there is a stay, it could be months before this is decided.
What?
unfortunately.
Yeah, and if,
Of course, in the mean,
which court would this stay be requested?
Common pleas,
Common
county court.
in the meantime, we can enforce our noise nuisance ordinance.
That you can always do. The noises ordinance, which was adopted, I believe, at the last meeting or perhaps the meeting before, was done specifically to try to be at least some stopgap measure to prevent noise from being an issue while not only the Mountain Manor case is pending, but while other things might be cooking.
Right,
Well, how many days does that ordinance have to be in place before you can,
it's good to go in.
it's good to go now? Okay.
I mean, again, someone can always file a dispute. We have an appeal filed to the ordinance that we adopted in 2018 or whatever it was,
Right.
saying it was adopted improperly. So
Correct.
you can file an appeal anytime,
Was
whether
that
you
properly
win or
now
not.
filed before common pleas?
Oh, I don't know what they've done. All I've done is read the emails from Jeff Durney who
Right.
said this is not proper before the
Right.
zoning board, you
Okay.
gotta be before common pleas.
Okay.
So whether that's happened or not, or
Christine,
whether
you
it
wanna
will
share?
happen or not.
Did you file with common pleas? Do you wanna share? You don't have to share. That's what we're talking about right now.
Oh, you're talking about Melody Mines?
Yeah, that's what we were just talking
I
about.
don't know if it's been officially filed, I know it's been written.
Okay.
But we would
I
get
believe
service. We would- The sheriff would show up and.
Yeah, yeah, because you're saying that.
I thought you were talking about the bike park.
We were, and then we just jumped. He's saying like the other case where
Oh, got it. Sorry.
we're learning up here too, so,
Got it.
Okay.
all right,
So in any event, I think that does it unless there's any more questions by the board.
you know.
No, we're good. Okay, John, you are fun.
Okay, mine's much less exciting. I helped Alex with the wetlands ordinance modification. We're continuing to do inspection on Airstrip Road. Had a conversation with Julia on the need for some research on the ownership of the right of way of Parker's Lane through the park. I'm happy to say that we finally got the electronic files and we can start moving forward again with some of your design projects. And the top of my list is the base plan for the community center over here. I'm hoping to have that completed by the end of the week so that I can get that out to everybody. And then we also issued a letter for the conditional use at 133 Worthington Avenue, but it appears that was for naught since they've withdrawn their application.
Well, at least technically though, we could deduct from their escrow. Correct. The cost of that already. So that's good.
And that's all that I have. Unless there's any questions.
Wow. Perfect, thank you. Next is the Board of Supervisors report, but in the future, in speaking with our emergency services, they indicated they would like a portion here to present some reports, so I anticipate that in the future.
EMS fire?
Yes, and so I just want to note for my supervisor's report that I think we've all been to a lot of meetings over the last several months. I know everyone in our back row there, emergency row, they can certainly testify to that, and I think we've done a lot of good work, and there's no doubt more work to be done. But I think we're finally in a place where we're buttoning up at least what we're going to try to do for the next year. So we'll get to that under new business. Next is the consent agenda, which is generally for ministerial things, but I'm going to go through and explain a couple of them. Although when we entertain a motion, I'm going to ask for a motion on it without item D included because they still have not paid the sewer authority as evidenced by invoices that we have over here. The first is a request for technical assistance from the Monroe County Planning Commission regarding the official map update, which Alex is going to talk about in a bit under his other items under new business. But that essentially means that they're going to be helping us provide the mapping and any other resources like they have with the map right behind you, right?
And that did come, I said that did come as a specific request from the committee. What's the committee name again?
Yes,
EAC committee, the
Yes.
Environmental Advisory Committee.
on
Correct.
April 16th, they unanimously moved to recommend engaging and MCPC on this.
This allows us to take advantage of a lot of resources that we wouldn't otherwise have, so that's great. Also, the EAC requested that we authorize letter of invitation to Natural Lands, so we can present to the EAC and talk about the bond, which is related to the work that Alex was asking Solicitor Karasak about. The other things are decidedly less interesting. We have a special event permit for Shawnee Preservation Society Community Day and a request to waive the fee, which we plan to grant. Item D is a special event permit for 1836 Saloon, but I'm gonna entertain a separate motion on that regarding their satisfaction of paying the Smithfield Sewer Authority their back fees. Next is a signal service contract renewal. They literally work on traffic signals. And then they have a Green Light Go extension and the Green Light Go payment application number 2, which was approved by TNM, and that is the continuation of that project. We also have the approval of the Cobalt Construction Retainage Payment, which is here in the bill pack. Our Labor Council, David Steckel, switched from Flam Walton Heimbach to Fitzpatrick Lentz and Bubba. So we have to reappoint him. And similarly, our friends at TNM Associates were historically our alternate zoning and code enforcement officer. But since changing names, we want to make sure that that is on the record. And then we have the adoption of resolution number 550 for Marshall's Falls Greenways Trails. And I forget the R in the RP. Recreation program, the GTRP program, and then there's a match commitment letter for that, which is for the next phase of the park. So that is there.
Julia, has the 1836 saloon either requested or have we offered a copy of the noise nuisance resolution? Noise nuisance ordinance?
I do not believe that we have sent that to the owner of that.
Seems like we should because they're affected by it. To know if there's a special events going, which is probably for their outdoor concerts, what will limit, so.
hold on, before we
Hold on.
start doing that, I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda items. Well, the whole thing except for, with the
Except
exception
D.
of item D, and then we'll
Discuss.
just do discussion.
I'll motion.
Motion by Mr. Albert, second by Mr. Levenheim. Comment, you seemed in.
Well, we're
indicate you had-
1836.
Oh, you want, okay,
Yeah, 1836 and 300.
Can we address that after then? Let's do it, we'll do that next after the consent agenda, which does not include 1866. Is that okay?
yeah,
Because
that's,
the motion specifically excludes that.
That's
We'll
fine.
talk about that next.
we'll do that separate, sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, we're discussing.
So I'm clear and I'm passing on the right information to the board. So I see you're gonna waive the fee for our event, which is
Yes.
great, thank you. And so is there a certificate of insurance required? And does it need to be the township? I got a message about that.
I mean, the ordinance does name that specifically, but. I mean, as long as you comply with that, you know,
You already have one.
you have these two that you sent us.
Too many concerns, the radio station on there, so. I had a message from Ken saying that we needed SPS on there, and then since then I've gotten another message, saying that the township also needs to be, so we're trying to make sure we have to go before the fire department too, they want to meet also.
Yeah.
It's getting very complicated, I just want to make sure
So-
I'm passing on the right.
We can't waive that.
Okay.
So in the future, we're going to amend our special event permit, because I think we all feel that. In some ways, it's intrusive and excessive. That's probably one of those ways, because there is no way that your yard sale is going to. Impact traffic and all these other things like it.
No different than playing.
Exactly. So we're gonna get into that after, in a future meeting, but.
So for now, I should have a certificate and it should name the township.
Yeah, and then you'll get the permit.
Pass on.
So, but we're still waiving the fee, so that's on there for you. Okay. Any other questions on the other items?
Yeah, green light goes on. Yeah, how many, resolution 550?
Julia, do you wanna talk about that?
Sure, resolution 550 is for the township to pursue a Marshall's Falls GTRC grant, which is due on May 31st of this year. What this is looking to fund is, creating a viewing platform on the far side of the bridge, as well as creating, a way to get from that viewing platform to where the old stairs are now, and then building an aluminum staircase in that will be accessible, so you can much safer get up to the top of the falls.
What sort of match is associated with this grant?
It is a 15% match right now, and that's comes out to 37,500. As it stands right now, I'm in the process of pursuing other grants, so that doesn't come upon the township at all. We don't obviously have that money secured, and we won't know if we get this grant until about the middle of 2025. So we're playing a little bit of unsureness here because of the time frame and whether or not we get the grant.
And just so I know for in terms of process, I mean, this is about submitting the application.
Yes,
Um,
the resolution is required to be able to submit the application.
Gotcha. But then before we would accept the grant, is there also gonna be a resolution?
Well, you don't need a resolution to accept the
You sign
grant
the grant
because the
agreement.
resolution names the signers, and by submitting the application, you've got the opportunity. If something does come up, they award us the money and we go, hey, thank you, we don't want this, we can absolutely
Or they
say that
theoretically give
at
you
that time.
less.
Or if they give you less.
Well, they give you less, or
opportunity.
we say, you know, depend what we decided to do, we don't know that we have the 37,500 because you haven't gotten any of the grants, but there is an opportunity to do that down the line.
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
There will be a grant agreement that we have to sign, and we can just,
And I do that in public forum.
In the past,
Okay.
the township has utilized LSA funds to match this program.
Okay.
And so then, and there's no match on that.
This doesn't sound like it's an inclusive stairway, is it?
it is insofar as that it will be capable, if you are able to stand up and walk, that you'll be able to use it. After a conversation with Christine Dettori from DCNR, normally they only approve ADA accessible, like fully ADA accessible projects. But because she's been so heavily involved in this, DCNR is in effect making an exception because they have the authority to do that if the terrain is so
Yeah, it's
against
impossible.
being able to allow that.
Joanne, you
I
had,
just had a question. You said the 15% was about $37,000. So what is this whole project? Then what would adopt resolution number 550? Is that like the cost of this whole?
Correct.
The resolution is the resolution, which is to prepare a grant proposal for $250,000.
Right.
That's why I was just asking. This is just a resolution that says, yes, we are willing to write this grant, but we'll have to have another time here to decide whether we want to spend that $37,000 or if we have.
So 37,000 would be the township's expense to this?
Correct, but that's a match, so you can find other ways. So Jacob just said in the past, we've had LSA money to match that, which is the casino money. So again, it would not be,
Where does that grant money come from? The state?
this one is what?
DCD,
DCD, yes,
DCNR.
Pennsylvania.
no,
This is,
the
sorry, it's the
DC. Yeah,
DCD side, sorry.
DCD,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just like, no, that's my fault. Like PennDOT and DCD both have multimodal. There are two separate GTRP programs, which are similar but not the same.
So it's federal?
No, this is.
It's still state,
State.
okay.
Okay, so what is it? State.
State, what do you mean, what is it?
Trying to get,
What are the initials that you just?
Oh, Department of
E-
Community and
Depart-
Economic Development.
DED is Department of Community and Economic Development. GTRP stands for Greenway Trails and Recreation Program.
That's DCNR.
No, it's DCED GTRP.
Minutes before we vote.
Turn that down.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay, now we can all entertain a motion on the 1836 saloon special event permit, then we can converse. So,
So
do I hear a motion?
with the information I have, motion to deny based on the fact that they sewer authority payments or to deny until
I was
such
gonna say
time
the
that,
sale, I was gonna say you can make it contingent upon.
okay,
Satisfying,
approving
because we have a
of-
permit denial ordinance already in effect.
okay. I'll make a motion to approve the special permit, event permit for fundraising car show, contingent on payment of amount due to the Smithfield Sewer Authority.
Okay, do I hear a second? Okay. Okay, so, there's a motion by Mr. Albert, second by Mr. Levenheim, you had,
I went to pay it today, they were closed.
oh, okay, all right,
Do we have a copy of the bill?
yeah,
Okay, because we don't have.
I don't have a copy of the bill.
Yeah. he needs
yeah,
a
here was
copy.
your,
Thanks, I will, hold on. I appreciate you.
no, then no worries, so, yeah, as soon as that's paid, you can
Yeah,
get your.
we don't have to change our thing because we're just gonna say it'll be approved once it's paid.
Okay, I paid it tomorrow.
Perfect,
We're good to go, we can advertise.
yeah,
take care.
okay, all in favor?
But, yeah,
Aye. Okay. Perfect.
I'm gonna have a special event every year and we'll get paid.
Well, that's the effect of the permit denial ordinance. In effect, if you don't pay, you're not gonna get, so fortunately, it's actually been pretty fruitful. It's a good cuddle. Anyway, under old business, we had the waterfront park house revitalization. John just mentioned that he won't have a base plan for that for until like next week or so, hopefully Friday. Friday, okay. Do we wanna hold off on talking about that then?
Well, I just wanna, I'm sorry, I still have questions.
No, it's fine, you have questions, I'm just saying.
Namely, I haven't seen the information that I feel is pertinent that I asked about before, which is I've heard statements that the building must be knocked down because it's unsafe, but I haven't seen that engineering report. You shared stuff with me, but
So.
it was contradictory.
Right, and as John just mentioned that he just got his digital files, so
Okay.
we're waiting on that for him to be able to go through all of his stuff.
Okay, perfect.
Have you ever been inside?
I have, I'm not an engineer. I'm not gonna tell you if the building needs to be knocked down. If an engineer says the building is unsafe, great, let's knock it down. That's my view
Well,
on it.
to me, there are two factors here, three rather. First of all, what we're discussing in a new community center, I think it's a separate,
So then my question is, do we need a community center?
well, I think we need a combination of a community center, offices, and also an emergency, center for when we have power outages and people need someplace to go, showers, whatever you need. But that's another issue. As far as the house, I think the question is, given what it is, and you can get the engineer's report, what would it cost to save it, and is it worth it for what we can use it for? That's really,
No, and I understand that. So like for me, if the building's not in good shape and it's dangerous. I mean, I know at one point it was shut down and then somebody else came in and
Right.
said it's actually okay as long
For
as it's like
11
50
people.
people.
Right.
And that is pretty useless to have a building, a community center that has, can have a maximum of 11 people. It's not really,
Correct.
doesn't really make sense.
Hold on one second.
Hold on. But then I just wanna understand if we're, and I know it's not necessarily gonna be tax dollars when we're gonna find the money for it. But even then, that means we could put those resources to, I just don't know what it is that we're basing, a design around. And I know some of this started before me, but I just wanna better understand.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, like,
That's why-
my kid's in Little League and I know they don't have a concession stand at this baseball diamond, and that would be great to have. I mean,
Good, no one loves concession stands more than Robert.
is he,
This
is the
guy.
one down here in this park?
Yeah,
Isn't there a concession stand there?
I don't think there is.
Yes, there is one in the shed in the back.
It's like tiny.
No.
Okay.
That's Boy Scout QM.
No, I'm talking about up at Waterfront in the backfield
baseball
behind
diamond?
our second field. Yeah, at the East Stroudsburg Little League
I
Field.
don't know, someone told me that we should have one, but anyway, so my point is not making it. My point is simply like, what is dictating our decision on
Right.
where we go after grant money for buildings? And I agree, if the building needs to be knocked down, then maybe it can be knocked down, but before we invest $600,000 in grant money into something, let's make sure we do what it is this township needs.
Well, exactly, and I think that's why I originally said we should talk about it, probably not the 22nd, because if we're going to talk about.
The conditional
If we're
use.
gonna be doing a conditional use hearing,
Yeah.
or not a hearing, but a discussion on that. Then I think probably that first meeting in June, because there's no current deadline for anything, because the statewide LSA opens later in the year. And the current
talking about
LSA Monroe closes in September.
We're talking about something, what, a 2-year project? Alex, what is it? I mean, this is looking towards the future.
Yeah, no, and I get that. I just wanna make sure that, we're all on the same page on, we're doing this because the township has said.
Yeah.
This is what we really need.
I agree. The biggest proponent of it would certainly be the now Scouting America, who are talking about the need for, if you can't have more than 11 people, that's a really bad case for.
No, I get that. I get that.
So there's that, and I would say its historic use as a community center was awesome, just because of the lack of maintenance and, other issues. I think that's where we should, start from here, but we'll talk to John, we'll do that in our,
Well,
Nick, let's just keep it on the agenda. We'll keep chatting about it as we go forward.
Michael,
that's fine.
besides getting the structural questions answered, I think the other question is, how much will it cost us just to keep that up?
I understand, because right now we're not doing a good
It
job.
needs a roof.
Because it currently has its occupancy as a house. Not a commercial structure. So that's only,
We had-
so what would it
comments.
cost to do
Yeah.
that? Christine?
So I also represent Boy Scout troop. Well, Scout troop 100
Yeah.
that has met in that building for many years.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that it's extremely important space to our Scout troop.
Yeah.
There was a period of time when it was closed, when we weren't allowed to meet there.
Yeah.
Where we scrambled every week, and I'll tell you that it truly affected our numbers,
Yeah.
our Scout numbers,
Right.
because we just didn't have appropriate space to do the projects and
Yeah.
presentations and whatnot.
Choosing a community space is important.
In
And
community space.
is there, I mean, what I wanna know is like, is there a number? Does our township really need a space for 100 people? Does it need a space for 20 people? Does it, and I know bathrooms are probably really key there. So like,
There's 2 new bathrooms in there, like, there's been work done on that, there's a brand new bathroom on the 2nd floor. Brand
That
spanking.
no one's supposed to be able to walk up to go.
so apparently, like, I've seen some reports that say that like, there's missing joists. There's missing joists in there, but this is
Yeah,
where,
that's, yeah, there were
There's whole
bats in the
areas
attic,
where
the
there's no
choices
foundation.
were not
Yeah,
plentiful.
yeah, I mean, there's some
Yeah.
definite liability issues,
Yeah.
even if it's great to be in
the
there.
wiring is probably the biggest.
But that's just what I wanna see. I haven't seen it. I wanna see that and then understand if it means that it's
This wiring
repairable.
is-
If
Right,
it's too expensive to repair it, does it make sense to give you a nicer space for the Boy Scouts that's in keeping with the look of it? But if we're gonna do that, what is it that we
I
really
think that's the
need?
key, regardless, is that.
And then how can we do it for as cheap as possible?
Right,
Michael, just to answer one of your questions. As far as we got with the architect, it was just a sketch floor plan. It was for 125 people. It could be divided into 2 rooms for 2 smaller meetings. And would have bathrooms, would have probably showers and also an area that could be converted into offices or other use if this was emergency uses. So we haven't gotten beyond that, but that's what the theory was when you're saying how many people.
Again, my question is still, I mean, that's the initial sketch plan, but my question is, what does our township need? Does it need 120 person space or does it need 20 person? I don't know the answer to that. What's it based on? That's all I'm asking.
Well, and that also might be something we could allow a committee, maybe the EAC.
hold on, no,
No?
we're not gonna have a committee for every single
Okay.
question, but
Well, when you say, what are our needs,
Well,
it'd
I
be nice to
agree.
know what people think of it.
I agree, but I think that Alex will talk about it insofar as a waterway access thing in a moment, but what he's been doing already on the River's Edge master site plan is exactly that type of community involvement, so that's theoretically an avenue that we can go down, but at the very least, I wanna make sure we've all seen the same engineering reports, because the information you're recounting is exactly what I see.
Yeah, but I saw back and forth emails that some are somewhat contradictory, so I just don't know.
So let's,
And I will say, I don't think it's a bad. Not that I'm advocating for a committee, but if is there a parks committee right now? No, there's the EAC.
Right.
And the EAC can make recommendations on investment of lands that are largely for preservation and
Recreation too.
yeah,
recreation.
Yeah, the EAC is sort of like an advisory.
But it's
board
an
that's-
environmental side of that
That's the
advisory, not a
focus.
community side.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not recommending it because the Boy Scouts need 20 people. That's not what that group is doing. It's
no, but
focused on
that's why
environment.
I'm suggesting, Alex can explain in a second, but the makeup of the master site planning
Yeah.
committee for River's Edge is a few community members, someone from the township, someone from the EAC, right, like it's.
Yeah, it's like basically a planning grant that we apply for through DCNR to help, engage the community through multiple meetings, and we're probably gonna be going out to bid for that pretty soon here, because DCNR approved it. And it's gonna be a whole process of engaging community surveys,
That's the
So
survey.
that's specifically for River's Edge.
Right,
yeah,
so
so analogously, you could do something for.
Well, I'm wondering, can that group, or is that group very focused on like other people involved
That
because of that specific site?
They are,
that grant is site specific,
No, I know the grant is, but the committee that's involved in it are the
committee is
people.
specifically that site.
And I'm trying to ask if that committee could morph into a more township wide, but if the people that are on it because of that site, okay.
No,
very
it's-
specific
it's-
to that site.
Okay, all right.
So the. Yeah. Devin,
I just wanted to say, to answer your question, Michael, some of the things that the community center has done, and I'll use Middle Smithfields, for example. Community blood drives, they've had educational programs for seniors, they do the taxes for seniors, there are a lot of things that can be done with it, just as an example.
No, I mean, I know, I run United Way, I know
Yeah.
what community,
So I-
I know that there are needs in the community, I'm just.
Right.
I'm also just trying to say, let's design something based on what that is.
Well,
I
you
just
need
wanna-
something that's functional. I would suggest something with a little larger kitchen, a little bigger room, and that can hold square tables and round. I'm just from experience.
Yeah.
And please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I don't want a community center, I'm saying I do, I just wanna make sure that the design of that community center has input from the needs of what our community.
That's why I'm suggesting something analogous to that.
That, I'm all for that, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I think that makes the most sense rather than something prolonged, because I do think in some cases it's prudent to have, say, you know, an EAC member, a planning commission member, and a supervisor, you know, things like that. On different projects, but I definitely think on this, you know,
Specific to water.
there's the money for it. I mean, Alex, how much was the master site plan grant for?
That was 50,000.
Right, that covers engineering,
Yep.
the survey costs, and then you use that to apply for whatever
Yeah.
will come of it.
It produces a cost estimate essentially, in addition to very detailed planning concepts.
And that's applicable to LSA, GCRP, all those, you know, it's not just for DCNR grants, it could be for theoretically any type of grant. It gets you your accurate numbers and shows your engagement, right?
Planning grant. I would defer to Julia in terms of whether or not those agencies offer planning grants that are analogous to the master site development plan for like that particular purpose.
More, I think what Jacob was asking is, once you have the master site plan, that's like your base need for pursuing any grants.
That's your
related to the
narrative
development.
section, correct?
Yeah, generally speaking, if you don't have a master site plan, for a piece of property, DCNR won't approve any grants for development. So this is step one before we can approve for any grants for the property.
Except the planning grant is exactly opposite of that, it's to help the plan for that master site plan.
So the planning grant produces the master site. plan.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's what but we're all in agreement, it would be nice to pursue another planning grant for waterfront property. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense.
Waterfront park, I'm sorry. Can we do that?
Yeah.
I make a motion that. No, I don't need a motion to do that, we're just agreeing.
Michael, just to answer
Go after that.
one of
After
your
planning grant.
questions about a better concession stand. We did also sketch out a concession stand for the soccer field here with public bathrooms in it. And part of this plan, if we do it, would be to bring a sewer line from at the corner, I think it runs just about to Twin Falls Road and Seven Bridge Road in here. And that's part of the money we'd be seeking is another $200,000. I think this whole thing is probably looking at somewhere around $800,000.
Well, we can get a
We're not
planning,
talking small change.
I know, we can get a plan, then all the more reason to pursue a planning grant if it's gonna be that big of a
That gets
project.
it done in that time frame. Anyway. Basically, the MSP will be nearly done by year's end, right? I mean,
Yeah,
All right,
it'll probably by midway next year. We're gonna need to request an extension to DCNR, but you're looking at completion by mid-2025.
perfect. Okay. All right, cool. So now that you talked about that fund, do you want to talk to us about the,
Dean has a question for you.
oh,
Okay.
sorry.
So will this, just so I can report back to my compadres,
We will involve said compadres.
say again?
We will involve said compadres.
So we're just, as they have said, we think we should pursue a planning grant. That,
Right.
and that planning grant would involve community members in how we've designed the master.
And at the very least, now we have all this experience with the other stuff, so we can prepare for that and potentially have a quicker on-ramp to.
Great, I love it, thank you.
And will this affect, so we're just about done for the school year meeting, so we
Yeah.
won't meet over the summer, but we will start back up again in September.
Yeah.
Will that affect our meetings? in
No,
We're
September?
talking about years, we're talking about years.
I know, I just want to be sure.
Yeah, no, as long as nothing structurally changes, you're good for that.
Got it,
That'll be fine.
thank you.
Statewide waterway access grant, you wanna talk about feasibility of that out?
Yeah, sure, Jacob. So Tower, which is an organization with Pennsylvania Environmental Council, administers a grant that is called statewide waterway access grant, it's SWAG. And this grant is essentially, this funding has it can be applied for planning grants, and then if you can get a cost estimate and base plans, you can then apply for the full construction if there's feasibility. So the grant that I'm bringing before the board for deliberation here is the one they have in your packet here, and it basically is, explains the sites at Minisink Park and along the Broadhead Creek, which is a unique access point, and this planning grant would be for the purpose of non-motorized folks, basically free to the public for a minimum, I think the grant requires 25 years, and it would basically be a planning grant to explore feasibility of our public lands to construct a concept that you have before you in those images. So it's an exploratory grant, a planning grant, at much smaller scale than the community center for something like that.
Where are you saying we would do this?
Yeah, Minisink Park, we also have the plot across River Road as well, that parcel, and altogether, I believe it's over 1,000 feet of stream frontage that our municipality owns. This would be, looking at any necessary improvements for a 105 or a general permit, which would require stream bank stabilization, and it would require, siting, what's the perfect site for it, where would you put the parking lot? It would be a very detailed feasibility analysis of those parks for this purpose, and that's essentially what it boils down to. That's what the grant boils down to, and it's we got a quote, and there's a certain dollar amount associated with it in terms of drawing up the base maps, having experts go out there and evaluate the sites for feasibility. There's a whole process involved.
And this is a planning grant, again, you're looking to pursue, as not about building this, but about
Correct.
looking at feasibility. And the planning would be largely like structural feasibility as opposed to community interest.
Yeah. Is it even possible to use that site?
Because I think that the other side of that is this something we want in our township?
Just so everybody knows what we're talking about, this is a kayak launching site. 3 pictures of different versions of it.
How much is the match, or how does that work?
Well, the quote we got was for 12,000. That's just an estimate. So you're looking at a 1-for-1 net match. So you're looking at a $6,000 cash.
Well, I guess I'm asking, how much is the match for the grant, or is the grant?
It's 1-to-1, you mean for construction?
No, I mean, like, this is, so if you said it's a planning grant, so how much?
Is there a match on the planning grant?
It would be 6,000 based on the quote that we got. I believe it's 5,000 because the general permits in and of itself is fairly complex process, and we would have to navigate through that. There's gonna be a lot of interaction with DEP.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, let's say it's the 12,000, so our match is 6.
Yeah.
At what point, if it doesn't work, if it's not feasible, do you cut it off?
That's a great question. It should be right in the beginning, because there's a survey, there's like the survey aspect of things, and then.
Is that part free? Or is that?
You have to pay an engineer.
Who do we-
I off the top of my head, I think it's around $2,000 to do the initial, like, is this actually gonna work? And
Oh,
let's go out and do professional surveying. And then if they say, oh, absolutely, this is definitely feasible, then they start drawing up base maps.
Is this something we can use TNM for, or how does
So
that?
we can, we can use P&M or any engineering firm.
So like the 2,000 is an estimate, right? Like, I guess I'm wondering,
If you wanna like scale it down and just do feasibility primarily before committing to like looking at.
yeah, 'cause I think that makes sense. I mean, it's definitely a good idea, generally speaking. I just wonder, if it won't work, I mean, there's a number of sites, but if it doesn't work, then.
Yeah,
How much have we thrown into it if it doesn't?
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, the engineer, any firm will tell you this isn't gonna work, we're cutting off,
Right.
whether you wanna.
So do we apply for the grant and then see if it works, or do we spend $2,000 on engineering and then the 1-to-1 match is just the construction?
That's a good question. I can talk to the person, my point of contact here, and clarify that for the board, just to see what their opinion is, and come back to you at one of your next meetings for the follow-up and.
That
yeah,
sounds
makes
fine.
A
perfect
bunch of
sense.
questions.
Oh, wow, Pat, thank you first.
I'm Pat Owens. Have we considered the environmental impacts of that on, like, Broadhead Creek has some water problems as it is now? And certainly that planning, the initial look should include those kinds of questions in the feasibility. as feasibility issues.
Right, well, I think that's the whole nature of the grant itself, so it definitely wants to ask its questions, and then. With you and the cool shirt, you wanna say your name for the record?
I'm John O'Radman, and I'm a longtime resident of Stroudsburg, Delaware Water Gap, and now Menacing Hills. And it seems to me that the site proposal is immediately downstream from the water treatment plant, which, if you drive past it, smells nearly every time you drive past it. And if you look, when you go to the soccer fields or the bike field, it says, do not swim in this water. So what logic is there? I love recreational use, but what logic is there in putting boats out next to a place that smells where you're not supposed to go in the water? That's my piece. Thank you.
Is right.
Okay, well, I just wanted to see if we can address that briefly, I mean, that's the type of thing that is. Addressing this, and I take it there's other sites than.
Historically, the
$6,000 on it.
I can say that
That's correct.
Take a walk there.
that's a very.
Well, believe me, with all due respect, we walk there all the time.
Yeah,
So,
it's a very reasonable
you.
question.
I get you.
Very reasonable question. There's actually a number of wastewater treatment point source discharges upstream of the Broadhead. There's
Yes.
East Stroudsburg, there's the one that this gentleman was referencing, and there's also the DCRA one. And, you know, as you go further down the creek, you get more and more wastewater. It's still one of the most pristine waterways in, you know, in the middle and upper Delaware, even with all those point source. Nonetheless, there, you know, it was brought up at the River's Edge meeting that there's a significant community interest in finding both like non-motorized boat launches, and they had proposed looking at potentially even River's Edge as one of those sites.
Right.
Just because you'd have to drive down to Smithfield Beach to launch, or you'd have to hire a private agency and they'd have to bring you to a place to launch your boats. Or you'd have to, you know, so that there is a need, in my opinion, to launch kayaks and things like that. Historically, Menacing Park was used for like the Delaware Sojourn for
I was
launching.
going to say.
And it was a great experience for all. And it remains a desirable site because it's right there near the confluence of the Delaware. And it's a large body of water, so there's not a whole lot of technical, you know, areas where you have to worry about flipping over. So it does make a lot of sense to me in terms of the recreational need. I can't directly answer the discharge of that facility because I don't know what exactly, I haven't looked at that NPDES.
It seems to be sometimes on weekends, but
Mhm.
I would say that maybe the EAC committee could look into it. I'm curious to know what the smell is. I don't think it's.
Well, it's been long like sewage.
It's,
Yeah, I know, but I don't think it's going into.
Miss
the
back,
creek.
here you go.
No, it's gotta be, I mean, there's laws around what you can put in the creek, it has to be treated first, which is what you're smelling, you're smelling it as it gets to the treatment plant.
But you don't smell it all the time.
Okay. Tara, go.
So my name is Tara Vecchio Freeman, lifetime resident of Smithfield Township, resident of Price's Landing, where you guys want to put this launch near. Where are you guys exactly looking? Because the picture of where you guys plan to put the launch is not posted anywhere.
the point of the concept here, and this is all purely hypothetical.
By the way, this literally,
Yeah,
when you say we consider, I mean, this literally just, this is the first time we're seeing this.
this is,
So you're,
exactly.
that's why we discuss things in public.
I don't know, what do you mean, been on the website for a month?
The RFP, the request for proposal, the map.
These are two separate things. So that, the RFP is related to River's Edge and putting a master site plan in for that. This swag grant is totally separate.
And in the notes for the bike park from the committee meeting, neither of which are advertised, by the way, on the calendar.
They're not required to be advertised because it's not a discussion of the Board of Supervisors.
The committee meetings are not required to be advertised on the calendar.
They don't make any decisions.
They're talking about making decisions for a bike.
They're not making decisions, they're making
Those decisions are made
recommendations.
here, and
to
no
us.
decision has been made on anything that's gonna happen there.
Okay, well, they're coming in, they're cleaning things up, they're working on things, so I assume that some decisions have been made. However, in the notes from one of those committee meetings, they mentioned the importance of putting in canoe and kayak access, which is why I thought that these two items were related.
That's a reasonable connection of the dots.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I'm asking where you guys are looking at putting the access in. Are you going on the side where the bridge is? Because we've had major issues where the state police have had to be called. We've had people come in bus loads from the city to that soccer field And those kids cannot play soccer because we have city people coming in. They're littering. You guys have had to have loaders down there getting rid of garbage. The park has been closed numerous times. So we feel that that's what's gonna happen if canoe and kayak access is put in there. We have the other issue of if you guys bring it all the way back into the creek. We have migratory birds, we have the beavers in there, we have all the animals that live back there, and it's an AE flood zone. So I'm just asking where you guys are thinking of putting this, because it's gonna impact a lot of the environment, it's gonna impact the people, it's gonna impact the soccer field. And it's park service.
I just wanna say this is hypothetical and that the grant doesn't actually, I mean, Alex is going to get clarification on some of the requirements, but the thought is that this is going to help present ideas on where to site it. Because obviously not all of those sites are gonna be feasible due to a lot of the reasons you just mentioned. So, you know, at that point, hopefully at our next meeting, we'll have more information, but we don't have any, there's no proposal for a hypothetical site at the moment.
But it mentions talking about the importance of it and.
Yes,
and
but the people that are interested in part of the master site planning committee are interested in that, but they don't get to make a decision. And ultimately, the township has to accept the master site plan, and we can reserve the right to make any modifications to it in applying for any grants. I mean, it's a planning document. It is not necessarily planning in the sense of like a land development plan or some sort of guaranteed project. It is a planning document in the sense of it's an aspirational document.
So when would the general public be able to comment on anything that's comes out of those meetings? Since
Right now,
the meetings are not able to be out.
right now, or the next, or at these meetings.
Okay,
I mean, we do
It's
have
coming
things
to the
on
right
the
meeting.
agenda,
First
right?
meeting,
So,
this is considered the first meeting for this discussion.
For this discussion, is the first time we've ever seen this.
we've tabled it the last several weeks, because we had, once anymore. What's it? Do you wanna go first, and then I'll call on you after. Go ahead. Marguerite, you're good.
I'm sorry, I thought that there was a grant already applied for the River's Edge, and money was allocated for it.
The township has a $50,000 grant for the master site plan.
So
Project.
it was written already
Isn't that just for the?
No, but-
between Middle Smithfield and
park.
Smithfield for the grant for the River's Edge Park.
That's for River's Edge, yes, that already exists. This is,
So what we're talking about and what our issue is already exists.
well, right, so there's a second, so this second plan it deals with other aspects that weren't necessarily covered in the previous master site plan, like the Frisbee golf, and there's a couple other community interests that were listed, but it's a
Right.
planning document, so it's not something that's guaranteed to be happen, but it's a committee that makes those recommendations, then ultimately, based on the survey data and a number of other factors, they delivered that to the board, and then is where we would make actual decisions on it.
Isn't that first
Okay.
plan mainly for the bike park in the Frisbee area?
Right, cause there's the second portion of the bike park, but then there's the.
But it
Frisbee
isn't
golf.
for anything to do with this
Okay.
spot.
It's for the whole site, I mean, people said they, as Alex can attest to, they said they wanted, the water access from it, but that doesn't
Who's
guarantee
they,
it.
if I can
This
ask?
committee.
This-
This committee that,
this
no,
committee?
no, this is not a committee, this is a board. The committee that you were just talking about, that you're
Right,
attending,
park committee.
the bike park committee. So
Okay, the bike park committee, okay. So I have just one big major problem. They wanted to open it up to riding bikes through all that property, which is not surveyed correctly.
We're investigating that now. I mean,
I want everyone to
Was
realize
this that GIS email?
Yes.
what
Yeah.
has been an issue,
Yeah. Julia spent a lot of man hours on that, so we're pretty,
okay?
We're aware apparently there's a GIS mistake, and
Yeah,
so it's getting
Big,
fixed.
big mistake to enough that we have been harassed. Where I've involved state police. And I just want everyone to be aware. And it really, really needs to be addressed more sooner than later.
well, that there's separate options for that, Julia spent between Julie and Alex, like they spent what, like 20 hours between the county on GIS and assessment. And, there's other options. We haven't formally talked about fencing or anything like that, but we've looked at some.
Fencing,
With all,
you have wildlife, you're gonna put fencing
Oh,
on
that's
it.
for the deer.
okay, with all due respect, if you don't want the people going onto your property, you can't rely upon everyone being nice. So I'm just saying that's something that is a theoretical possibility. We haven't, this is the first time this has ever been mentioned.
Because we didn't know about the other meetings, otherwise we would have voiced it, that's why.
No, that has, with all due respect, that has nothing to do with this issue. That issue, the issue that you're talking about is significant to us and we are working on it, but it is totally separate from the park in general. With this planning grant, that is purely related to, people trespassing. That's something that we're working. So we want to make sure there's a resolution on that. We're not trying to, every ordinance we've passed in the last like 2 years has been trying to get people less involved with other people. So we, less infringing on your rights, the nuisance ordinance, all this stuff. And I heard about the individuals that you encountered. I think I met one of them myself, so I know exactly what you went through. So we're working on it, I promise. Laura, you had it.
I'm behind on this, I think. I'm just unclear. This would be an access point for kayaks, but not is this for private people with kayaks? Is this for companies that, like Chamberlain's?
No, it's a good question. If I can answer that, it would be purely for members of the public who wish to use it. It wouldn't be, you couldn't have a private company profiting and using it for their business. It would just be people like you and me who have kayaks that would like to go somewhere other than Smithfield Beach or having to hire someone to launch it for us. We could just, park our car there, launch the kayak and have our friend pick us up further downstream and bring us back. That's a bad example, but that's kind of where I'm.
So it's for
Yeah.
private people who want to access the river.
Correct. At the
They're
Delaware.
gonna access it from the bottom of Broadheads Creek,
Correct.
and it's not for Chamberlain's and all that.
Correct.
And it's not a drop off.
Correct.
Once you're on your kayak, you can't go back.
Shoot,
Well-
pedal hard enough.
Yeah.
You have the water really hard.
Yeah.
To that spot, so it's not really a drop off. It's not a, you know what I mean? It's not like a pickup.
You're definitely not gonna get picked up there.
Okay. Okay, it's an entry point for private kayaks.
And keep in mind, this has existed in some informal sense, and the thought was maybe there's something that could make it easier for, individuals rather than just groups, right?
This has been a dream in this township for longer than I've been here, but when Minisink Park was built, it was built with kayak tie-ups along Cherry Creek because they thought there was going to be kayak activity and you can go in there and so forth. They're still there by some of the kiosks that are near the creek, but never happened. But it's, we're still trying. It's only been, I don't know, 15 years.
That's not Cherry Creek though.
He's talking about Minisink Park in general, that there's multiple.
You said there were types on Cherry Creek though.
There are kayak tie-ups there.
On Cherry Creek?
Yes.
I don't know.
Look for
You're
the,
talking about Broadhead, not Cherry.
look for the kiosks with the, the nature
On
sign.
both sides of the park.
By the railroad bridge. I don't think they've ever been used, but they were put in with the idea that, you could come in there with your kayak, tie up, have lunch, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
And I just want to say, I love the heated views, which is great. That's why I think a planning group such as the one that you're referencing, which I have not been to those meetings, is important. And it's also important to have multiple people such as yourselves attending and voicing your opinion, because the three of us who have to make a decision whether you go forward with something like this for the benefit of the entire township, want to understand what the township wants and what is a desire of the township to have. So, I'm hearing very clearly from certain people in this room, that under no circumstances should there be a boat launch on the Broadhead in that location. I think going to these meetings have you been attending these other meetings?
They're not published, that's why.
Okay.
I don't know when the dates are to go.
That's not true.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to approach this, but it's purely hypothetical, it's purely a concept at this point, it's merely, and what I'm presenting to the board here is merely an opportunity to explore.
Well, that's this, I'm talking about the planning group.
The River's Edge, that is gonna have, it's a whole process, and they, you know, once we engage professional, all of those meetings will be, some of them are published meetings with a quorum of supervisors. There's a whole schematic, if you go to the
So we
website.
have only begun to start.
Very,
You're
very
just-
early. Yeah, the original meetings were more so just to get to know each other as opposed to making significant progress for the purpose of going out to bid. So if you go to the website on the River's Edge, you'll see the request for proposals. And if you read through the scope of work, you'll see precisely the whole process and what's going to occur for this planning grant. And that will allow, lend some predictability to the process for the public, I hope.
I understand that, but my whole issue, and I didn't mean to get combative before, but I'm frustrated because I understand that they don't need to be published, but I didn't know that the meetings happened until the minutes were posted. And then I actually called you and said, this agenda says the meeting is happening the first Wednesday of the month. Is the meeting happening May 1st? And so you said, no, we're getting, we have an RFP out, so we're not holding meetings. So I would love to go to the meetings, Mr. Albert, but I didn't know when they were.
Okay.
So
They're
that's
back
all
and
I'm
forth
saying.
between Smithfield and Middle Smithfield.
No,
You-
well, that's sorry.
And we.
Is it between Middle Smithfield and Smithfield
It's.
because of the shared park?
Yeah, sorry, I did not mean to.
So some places it's posted, some places it's not. It's either in Facebook once or, you kind of have to juggle them
Yeah.
to find your information.
We're making sure that it's on our website. I mean, as the process formally starts, that will be there, but thus far, it's just been introductory. So when,
It's been introductory and we're not even, the notes are up there specifically to help and lend transparency to the process, those minutes up there that we're posting. Maybe, can I ask you a question, Julie? Are we required to even post those up there?
Until,
No.
it's my understanding that the way this committee works is that once the committee is formed, they are entirely outside of the public. This is basically the committee that goes, hey, what are we going to do? And once you get to the point where there's public comment, then everything absolutely is posted online. We keep everybody
that's
informed.
where you do surveys, that's where you actually
Yeah.
do the work. This is about asking the questions. This is about.
In effect, the committee as it is created is are the people that formed the rough draft idea. And
I think
it's
that's,
not even
the point is that maybe you're getting upset before you have to get upset. And well, I can't tell you not to get upset, but I'm just saying like, it seems like it's in such infancy that
Oh, but you got a grant, so it's not in.
we got a grant to plan. It's a planning grant. It's not a grant to develop the things. It's not a grant to develop this.
Okay.
Right? That's why I just recommended a planning grant for Waterfront Park too, same thing. Because it's good to get input from everyone. And it sounds like there will be opportunities to provide your inputs.
Yes, numerous opportunities.
Yeah.
All right,
So
speak,
will future meetings be published then? So public
Yes.
can come and provide comment?
absolutely,
Yeah, absolutely.
yes, okay. Next is a discussion on zoning ordinance amendment regarding
So
wetlands.
we're just tabling this.
You don't need to table it, we just had a discussion, so Alex just has to. Get some
Appreciate the.
clarification.
Okay, perfect.
So now he's going to talk to us about this
Oh, that's.
zoning ordinance amendment
Sorry, carry on.
regarding wetlands, which I know John has had a chance to review, and I'll let you explain that, Alex.
Yeah,
Before we go, I've got two copies in front of me. Which one am I looking
the
at?
one with the highlights.
Okay.
So essentially, at the work session, as I recall, the Board of Supervisors deliberated on this concept and that concept has now reached a state of maturity and is being presented to the Board of Supervisors for consideration. And what that concept is essentially some good housekeeping on zoning ordinance 27-401 district regulations 3D. And it allows for more language on the standards for wetlands and the wetlands margin. So
So
I'd say it allows for more specific language and also updates it to what the standards really are. Whereas the old one was very vague.
Yeah, that's a great way of summing it up.
What are we doing with this today for, or do we have to make a motion
Just
on this?
discussing.
Just discussing, okay, so we're
And,
gonna.
and we're going to entertain a motion to request the planning commission review it. Alex is going to talk to them tomorrow.
So I reviewed this, I had some emails to you that I sent, some clarification. So, I know this is a sort of red line, because there's lots and lots of lines. And there's a few things that I suggested, I was like, why is this here? And they said, oh, that was there before, because it was in the, I maybe copy and pasted, so it looked like it was new, but it's actually the same. So I guess, I mean, everything in here for me looks fine. I just want to understand, what's the major thing that has changed from before?
There's gonna be some additional standards for how large the on-lot sewage systems and on-lot water supply would be in the wetland margin area.
Right, because then before you could do up to 40%, well, that's still the same.
That's 40% is not changing in the margin area. It's just what's really changing in from the what's currently in place is 4. That's a new provision. Number 5, no cutting of the vegetation within wetlands. You can still do limited forestry activities. There's also a lot of language in lending consistency to chapter 26, which is your stormwater ordinance, which came out of the work session. The only other, I guess, number 6, there shall be no storage of construction related materials within the wetland or the wetland area. So if somebody's building
Well, it's within the margin area.
and both. Basically, you can't store a bunch of topsoil that you're gonna, put back in the site. I think that's fairly reasonable. And then number 7, there shall be no storage of toxic or hazardous or contaminating compounds within the wetland itself or the wetland margin area. And there's a list of some of the prohibited substances such as petroleum-based products, industrial substances, PFAS chemicals, chlorinated substances, and salt and deicers, fertilizers, or pesticides. So
What's the margin area again? How many feet?
it's 75 feet. So it's essentially, you can still build a garage in the margin area if you so please. It's just you can't store a bunch of gasoline in there because, for example, this is a bad example, but or a shed that, you can build a shed there, you can still build in the margin area if you can demonstrate that it'll impact just 40% of it. It's just a matter of, no bulk storage of contaminating compounds. And a lot of this language is borrowed from other ordinances here in the Commonwealth. Very few of these concepts are de novo here. There's also some additional language on utility crossings. Before it was very limited and vague. Now they're much more detailed. So that's pretty.
Do the other ordinances of this nature have any waiver provisions, or is that really generally not necessary because 40% is lenient?
I think 40% is lenient considering you already have the stormwater ordinance in place, which kicks in at 5,000 square feet of impervious. So this would apply to people that want to build sheds and, like garages or things within the margin area that don't necessarily require a stormwater drainage plan. Maybe John.
Is it right now? Is the 40% not there right now? You can do.
No, it is there. It's
already there,
Yeah,
right?
40% is there. We're just, adding some language. For example, if you have 2 wetlands on your property, you can't say, well, let's take all the area combined and call it 40% and go around one wetland. You have to, it's for each wetland.
Okay, that
It's
makes
not
sense.
contiguous, just common sense provisions for that kind of activity. So I think the overall impact to the community will be minimal. It's just if you had an intent to build a really large on-lot sewage facility right next to a wetland, that probably isn't going to be as feasible under these provisions. A single family home, 1,000 gallons per day is what's being proposed for on-lot sewage, which is quite large for an on-lot system right next to a wetland. 25,000 pounds per day of water can still be drawn from within the wetland margin area. So if someone needs to put an on-lot well for a house or development, they can still do that within the margin area. They just can't put it in the wetland. One of the problems with the current ordinance is that it allows for sewage systems in wetlands, it allows for golf course development in wetlands. There's some problematic provisions in there, and my recommendation is to remove those and add this language to add more detail and ultimately protection to the community, in my opinion.
John, did you have any thoughts on it? Hold on one second, Joanne.
I did, but I did discuss them with Alex, and I think he's incorporated most everything that I suggested. We spoke yesterday and again today.
Perfect. Joanne?
Is there like a set of feet, like that you can't build within the wetlands, like say 50 feet or 100 feet or?
Can't build it all.
Seems to be like setbacks. Yeah.
But so that's a good question. So currently, there is a 75-foot margin area, which is also, could also be called a buffer,
Right.
which you can impact 40% of that area
That's outside the wetland,
outside of, yeah. outside
75
of-
feet away from the wetland.
Yeah.
So that's essentially the buffer.
Is it Act 167 that specifies what the buffers should be?
Stormwater,
Yeah.
stormwater would be different, so that
For large
applies on the
projects.
larger parts.
Yes.
And do you remember what it is? I think-
5,000 square feet is what you just said, right, Alex?
But I mean, the buffers, I think it's 100 feet.
100, I think it's 150 feet, Nick, 167.
Ours are more stringent, I know that.
But those are waiver, they can come for relief to the board as well,
Right.
those provisions.
Correct.
And they can come,
75, you can come for relief?
they can come. well, you-
75, you have the
75,
right,
you can get 40%, you can build, basically, it's, the language says that you can build, let's see here, it says. Altered, regraded, or filled. Of 40% of the margin area, so if you have a wetland and 40% of that area, you calculate by area, you do the, you can do those things, 40% of that margin area. The other 60% must remain intact. To go above 40%, you'd have to seek relief from the zoning hearing board.
Nothing, something can't work, nothing.
Other municipalities have much stricter regulations. They allow nothing within 50 feet. There's a setback and it's just 50 feet from a wetland. That's it. You have to come for relief. So I think these provisions are more liberal for property owners than other municipalities that I've seen.
But less than the act.
What's
So
that?
less than Act 1.
The act only is triggered with large projects.
Right.
So if you come in for a large scale land development plan with more than 5,000 square feet of new impervious,
Mhm.
then you trigger the stormwater ordinance, or a drainage plan, and it's a more complex process. But for small projects, this is what you could probably still build a large shed within the wetland margin area without having to come for anything from the township, other than just the permit for the shed.
Right.
And the zoning officer will be able to figure that out pretty easily. with
Okay.
the plot plan.
So
That's not
that's already there anyway.
Yeah, it's not.
This is just clarifying, okay?
Michael, Jacob, can I add something? I'm not sure if Alex is aware, but with the zoning stuff, we do have 150 feet setbacks with the wetlands.
We do.
That's,
That's Act 167. Again, that's only for larger projects. That is
No,
near,
that is also for a residential home to be built also.
if they're, in my interpretations, if they're proposing 5,000 square feet or more of new impervious, then yes, they would trigger a drainage plan, and that buffer is just for the purpose of stormwater management. It's not a zone. That's a common misconception.
Well, to my understanding, to get a building permit for a residential home on a lake or by a wetland, you need to have 150 feet.
that doesn't seem in keeping with, in this township.
Not always is maybe my answer, but again, I don't deal with the building permits, so I really can't speak specifically, to be honest. That'd be a question for a zoning officer, maybe our engineer. I don't know.
But we just went through this and John should know about it.
The 150 feet kicks in if you need an MPDS permit, which requires a disturbance of more than 1 acre. And that is, again, governed by the Stormwater Management Act. What we're talking about here is the zoning district, which has the 75-foot, and the Stormwater Management Act, the Board of Commissioners can waive what's going on there. The Board of Commissioners cannot waive
Township.
zoning ordinance. The only relief is at the zoning hearing board.
Oh, there's no chair. Brad, go ahead.
Yes,
Oh, I guess we got a vice chair. Go ahead.
I look for the decision-making process of regarding vegan, the bike at the airport. And it was a few years ago, and it's not visible on the website. Those meetings were that permit was discussed, and it is on the wetlands, but it's legal because it doesn't impact enough. Your answer was slightly, I wasn't clear.
I was going from memory. My memory is that I thought they were only encroaching on the wetlands margin, and they were given relief to do that. I don't believe they were allowed to go into the wetlands, certainly with the building. That would have required DEP approval. They would have needed to obtain a permit from DEP for that, and I don't believe they did. They may have for some of their storm sewer work, which again, I can't really recall. I do recall the discussion though of them encroaching on the wetland margin, which is really upland. It's not wetlands. It's referred to as the wetland margin, but it truly is uplands. And
It's a matter of inches though. And that, on that site, it's a matter of inches, maybe a foot.
you're talking about vertical difference. Yeah, you are correct. Well, there's more than just the vertical elevation. There's three components that must be met in order for an area to be classified as wetlands. Has to have hydric soils, must have wetland vegetation, and it must have water for an ample amount of time to support that wetlands vegetation. So you could have an area that appears to the layperson to be very swampy. But there's no wetland vegetation there, it is not a wetlands. I've seen some areas that appeared fairly dry to me, but wetland scientists have classified them as wetlands because there was hydric soil there. It was getting sufficient water from the ground up, from high groundwater table, and it had vegetation. So it's more than just elevation, and it's more than just having water or the lack of water.
I guess my ultimate question is, could Vegan come in today with the proposed changes, could they build that?
Yes, because yes, I don't think this would impact that. I just don't think it was that big an impact, to be honest. Could be wrong, but I don't recall it being that big of an.
There's a lot more on the airport though. It's a lot of wetlands there.
Speaking of the airport,
Yeah, that house.
I'm the one who brought this to Alex's attention. And the airport was my prime motivation because I've heard that it's changed hands once again. I'm not sure of that. But it's our industrial zone is probably the only place we can really build an industrial zone. And I think what we need to do is have something like this that is very specific, that could update what we have now, so that when somebody comes in there and wants to build, we've got a document to say, you can do this, you can't do this. The airport is, first of all, it's a great piece of open space. People can develop it, but the question is as what? And what we found with Black Buffalo, who suddenly put a 4 or 5 story tower there, showing what they were going to build for some industrial plant, which I guess is now off the table. We don't have enough to say, well, this is sensitive area, it's either wetland or wetland margin, and you can or cannot do what you want. This document sort of answers those questions for us. It is what most townships have now. It's the updated version. What we had in the code before, especially in the definitions, was something that was so vague that it was.
Although I will say, I mean, not to harp too badly on what was there before. When I was on the planning commission when Black Buffalo came in and they presented a plan and John was there and he said, you're not gonna be able to do that plan. Because it's very clear in our ordinance that you can't do it.
Right.
So it has arguments, but this does make it clear for sure. I agree with you. So it's.
Joanne and then.
In that ordinance, does it have that if somebody comes in to present some kind of a plan, that they are required to do a wetland delineation and have, the orange?
That's already in the ordinance.
That's in there to do, they have to do a delineation?
Any land development or subdivision. If you want to subdivide your property. I mean, I know this personally because we've subdivided a residential property and we had to get a wetlands delineation.
They put the flags out and everybody knows that this is where the wetlands are.
Well, in my case, there was no wetlands, but yes, you have to get approved.
Monroe County, is it the conservation or corridor?
Army.
Army Corps of Engineers,
That's it, yeah, that,
correct,
they do that. But
correct,
somebody has to have that done,
correct.
and they can't move wetlands anymore, right? No.
That I would have to, we would have to look, I mean, I don't,
The word, I just wanna make sure it's not in that
I mean,
ordinance anywhere.
theoretically, people have, but I don't, we haven't come up with anything in a while that let that happen. Christina?
Two questions, I think, quick. Alex, the zoning, section that you're looking to amend, can you repeat that?
It is 27, chapter 27, which is zoning ordinance 401, which is called district regulations. 3D.
Got it. And then second question, at what point are we able to see what you guys are reading as the as Alex's suggestion?
So we have to, well, go ahead, Nance.
I was gonna say, this is the first time we're seeing it, so we're going to, in a moment, formally request that the planning commission review it. I think at that point you would, but also, isn't it already online, Alex? I couldn't remember with this one, something else you did is already online, but not,
Yeah, not this one yet. And we will make a website per the board's request and put this up there, so anyone from the public.
When we're drafting out these things, it doesn't make sense, because there's mistakes. It's just sense so you can read every little, add an and here, but it has to be visible by public before we vote on it.
Right. Just sometimes there's not a whole lot of time between us seeing it and.
Well, there's 60 days, what's the time frame from, it's a posted ordinance before you? No, 30,
that.
You can advertise an ordinance 7 days before the meeting.
of 7 days, there you go.
You just need a planning commission review on this, but I mean, historically, we've always done much more than that. Even if we only do advertise 7 days, you know, from the noise ordinance that we talked about for that
That's a regular ordinance.
better part.
Zoning ordinance is twice.
Correct.
No earlier than 30 days before, no later than 7.
Correct.
That's what it was.
So I guess right, so I guess what I'm saying is, you'll definitely see it, and I mean feasibly, tomorrow's planning commission, that should be fine, since we're formally gonna request them to review it, so then at that point, it's more than a pre-deliberative document.
Got it. Thank you.
It's a fun collection of words. Okay, do I hear a motion that we request the planning commission review?
In Monroe County or just ours?
Smithfield Township Planning Commission,
Gotta be both, so.
yeah, sorry, both is fine.
All right, motion to request that the planning commissions review the wetlands ordinance as drafted.
Mr. Albert, second, Mr. Levenheim, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is the consideration to adopt resolution 551, fire tax disbursements and standards. This has been a product of many joint sessions with Middle Smithfield. Price and at times, but not lately, our friends at Delaware Water Gap. Tim was there to make sure. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so this allocates, especially since they already had one. Anyway, so this spells out the allocation for our 0.55 Mills fire tax for the fiscal year 2024. And basically, the township will collect or will keep 2% of all collected funds for the purpose of the volunteer service tax credit program refunds and miscellaneous related expenses, which, for example, are payment for fire expenses borne by the township, if any. That's not the case for everyone, but that includes workers' comp and vehicle insurance and fuel, which not everyone takes us up on, though we will authorize Marshall's Creek in a minute on the participation in the auto policy, because that's cheaper. The split is as follows: Delaware Water Gap Fire Company, 8.45%, Shawnee Fire Company, 38.27%, Marshall's Creek Fire Company, 53.28%. And then we have the reporting standards, which include the audit for organizations whose revenue was $500,000 or more in the prior fiscal year. And then the review, if you're less than that, and then that also requires you to give us every receipt and a variety of reports. It also clarifies that the funds must be used in accordance with the Pennsylvania second-class township code. And it also requires a number of other reports, including various statistical reports and the presentation of an annual budget. I think that just about covers it. We also request that they pursue grants And continue fundraising activities with the exception of road drives, just our neighbors have proposed. And that is generally everything else, I mean, other than the maintenance of their compliance with established standards of which we are not the custodian of. I think that just about covers that, and it also includes addressing conflicts between the departments and the funding. I think that covers it. Gary,
What was Shawnee's, percentage?
38.27%. So this has been a work in progress between various studies and joint sessions, and I think we have exhausted as much energy as possible on this.
We got a question, Jason.
Oh, go ahead, no.
On the, under number 4 there, the 8, DA part, you were saying, according to what we got here is we're not allowed to do road drives in the Smithfield Township now?
Correct.
And what made our change of part there, because that was, Smithfield's thing said we couldn't, but, we said we couldn't.
Correct,
They
originally.
said we could.
Correct, originally, when we started this, yes, but in the last few joint sessions, Julia indicated she was recommending to us that we not allow that, but also practically.
Have
There's
you ever done one in
no
Smithfield?
location for it,
Smithfield? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
where?
we used to do them at the intersection there before they built this.
correct, and if this changes,
Before.
right, and as I spoke to one of your members today about this very thing. Road drives are specifically, you know, what occurred in the past, like on 209, but that doesn't limit community drives, like, for example, when Shawnee collected funds when directing traffic, there are different means, it just means that you specifically can't do that.
See, because the only reason we did road drive is to catch John Q. public, not our residents. It was the people coming into the area to help offset the cost that we have
Yeah.
to supply to them,
Right,
and they cause all the problems.
well, I mean, I mean, we can debate the data, but I can appreciate that, but at the rate of which you're going to get, that more than makes up for it. I'm not saying just be happy, but what I am saying is this is going to be an evolving thing, and if we make a different determination at a later date, we can.
But
I guess my,
we're regulated by you, like what our expenses are allowed to use out of that taxpayer money. This money is for our other operators.
no, and we actually say we want you to fundraise, for sure. I'm just surprised, because I understood, I mean, when's the last time you did one of these, 10 years ago?
When,
I mean, is this a real issue?
2012.
2012, so you did it 13 years ago?
Right.
I'm just,
we did.
this is
road drives-
this year, this is 2024 only.
We did road drives in Middle Smithfield Township.
I know, and they're gonna be okay with you doing them?
No.
Well, they're not,
No,
no,
Okay,
no, because the local residents up there complain.
okay, I mean, I'm just asking, because I saw this and I was like, do we really care? But my understanding was, it's been 13 years since you've done one of those, so.
Maybe you guys don't care, but that's $18,000.
we definitely care, but you're getting 162,000 from us, so I mean, you're getting 162,000, that's.
Part of this other thing here is, you were saying we were supposed to get all the funding we can get on our own. Well, this was part of our funding. Now, Middle Smithfield just cut us out of our golf tournament up there. They're gonna make that pay. They used to give us the golf course.
Yeah, they should.
Well,
Now,
and
they're
we
gonna charge us for.
we obviously disagree with that determination, and, you know, I publicly urge them to reconsider that, but with this, we consider that to be a fundamentally different thing. I mean, 162,000, it's 187,000 a full collection.
Hold on. I guess my question is just, honestly, we have to pass this resolution every year. This is not, this can change every year. I'm just curious, you literally have not done one of these in Smithfield for 13 years. Did you have a plan to do it this year? Are we fighting just for?
Yeah, no, we were going to.
You were going to this year. Where were you gonna do it?
We were gonna set it right up over here in the circle. It's a place where everybody has to ingest.
You're gonna stop people at a traffic circle to ask them for money? Well, you'd get denied for that because that's not safe. You can't stop people at a traffic circle?
We stopped right up there by Wendy.
I mean, definitely appreciate that, but the nature of this is is the funding that you're going to get is going to far.
I think that's irrelevant, I mean, honestly, that's whatever, okay.
Sure, well,
Okay. We can revisit it for next year.
it's just fundamentally impractical, but I get it.
I mean, honestly, if there was a place where you've been doing one for the last 10 years, I would have been in favor of saying, let them keep doing it, but you haven't done it in 13 years. So you haven't missed that $18,000 you said you got. You haven't done it in 13 years. I don't know why you haven't done it in 13 years. Should have.
Why? Because the traffic flow went up 209.
I know, so how are you gonna change that next year? You're not gonna change that. Okay, I don't,
Yeah,
we can revisit it next year.
Well, we can raise the taxes next year too.
Jesus Christ.
Wait, look, let me just say.
Wow.
The reality here is that the money is already being generated that you wouldn't have got otherwise. So I definitely appreciate the sentiment because I know it's not just the money, it's the camaraderie, it's a lot. But we're gonna work with you in earnest to make sure that that still exists. And I think that with Community Fest and other things that we're working on, I think that we can more than make up for that. But I mean, the perceived deficit is our friends in Middle Smithfield. I hope they reconsider their decision on the golf course. I mean, I think that's
one of our biggest fundraisers.
Yeah, if
Absolutely.
there's something we can do on the side to help you with that, I will definitely love to help you do that, because I think that they should let you have that too.
I don't even mind writing them a letter.
Well, the problem is with the golf course up there, their sale pending. That's what they're going on, and we're gonna be selling that, so that new owner is gonna have to
Is
make
it
a deal with it.
pending this time?
Well, that's fine, but we've been watching this sale for this golf course.
I know. You know,
Yeah, we made our agreements with them, our last golf tournament in September. We do that every, push it ahead for the next year.
well, look,
Let's make this go forward, and then we'll ask for a
hold on,
letter to be written.
Julia was gonna.
Yeah, one thing that I did want to add, I did speak with Middle Smithfield Township, specifically about the road drive. And one of the things that convinced me to give the recommendation to the board that I did is that it wasn't visitors who were calling to complain. It was all residents, and I absolutely understand that that is a really good thing for you. But in the end of the day, they've heard more from residents who were displeased with it than they did visitors. So I absolutely understand that it's a good venue for you guys to catch the out-of-staters. But after having just imposed this tax, we didn't feel that it was fair to first impose a tax on our residents. And then have to look at them and say, by the way, now you are going to have to put up with road drives in your township as well. That was the thinking behind this, and I know it's frustrating, absolutely, but like one of the things that Jacob has said. Yes, you are looking at losing quote unquote that $18,000, but for giving up that $18,000, you're going to get 162.
But out of that 162, we can only use that for functioning of the fire company.
Well, what else do you need it
We
for?
have other operational things that we do, like vibrators, they cost us money. And that money we cannot use out of tax money, we have to use that out of fundraising money, so it capitalizes itself over and over. So now that we're losing that, it's gonna make it harder for us to do our other fundraisers because we don't have the money.
But we definitely want to be helpful on that. When I was at Habitat for Humanity, it was the same thing. You know, grants can't pay for fundraising, so I get that, but I think that there's a lot of other ways that we can work with you on that, more so than ever existed in the past. And we're definitely very amenable to that.
The other side of this, if you think about it this way, the money that you would have used from fundraising to have to pay for capital improvements like your trucks and electricity to make sure the lights stay on, all of that can be shifted. So that frees up a very large amount of money that feasibly you didn't have before because you needed it for capital expenses that you can now use this fire tax to disseminate.
That said, I'm gonna move that we adopt resolution number 551. Do I hear a second? Second, Mr. Levenheim. Any further questions? All in favor? Aye. Next is the consideration to authorize Marshall's Creek Fire Company to participate in our Smithfield auto policy should they so choose. Shawnee already takes advantage of this and it saves funds for both us and them. It's just a motion, it's not a resolution.
Oh.
So do I hear a motion on that item? Motion to approve. Motion by Mr. Levenheim. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Albert.
we were informed that we don't have to do that.
You don't have to.
We can do it at another point.
Yeah, we just wanted to, yeah, and when I spoke to Tuck earlier, he said y'all were gonna decide on Monday, but we just wanted to make it formally available.
And it looks like it saves $5,000 a year.
Yes, the current policy costs about $14,400. If we bring it underneath the township's umbrella, it will drop down to about $9,900. So it is looking at the cost saving benefit. We're obviously not forcing you into anything. But we are, the point of this motion is to formally extend the offer if you would like to take us up on it.
Right. I mean, if you want to, Debbie,
Sure.
that's technically on the
Oh,
your
I'll
resolution.
take it first.
Oh, yeah, I know, I'm just gonna, just wanted to say, okay, anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is the consideration to adopt a similar resolution, number 552, for emergency medical service tax disbursements. Everything else that I just mentioned is the same, except the split is amongst different companies. Bushkill EMS receives 81.5%. Suburban EMS receives 16.5%. Marshall's Creek EMS receives 2%. That is in accordance with both population and land, just like the last one, but we also wanted to fund to prolong Marshall's Creek's EMS, as they're not a primary provider, but they do fill in quite a bit when there's a dearth elsewhere. So the same on 2. Oh, 16.5. So, and that number may well change going forward, but we wanted to make sure we contributed something, because we know the intent is not to become primary, but we certainly want them there.
Maybe it should have been done for the good of the crowd. The goal was to have a very similar ordinance in each of the townships. So we went over those. They are gonna differ slightly. The reality is, if there's a township that has more strict requirements, those companies that are, those EMS or fire providers that are in both, they're gonna have to do that anyway. But we're the first ones to pass one, correct? So we'll obviously share this with the others, and maybe they, because we've basically simplified a few things in here as well, so.
Correct.
We didn't even require to report.
In this case, it's an audit. If you receive more than, if your organization's size is
500,000 or more.
Now, I will speak candidly on that. I think we would have went for a less restrictive review, but our friends on the other side are very much they're in favor of a higher review. Michael has a lot of experience personally with.
Well, no, I
was gonna say, well, you did mention that you had experience with this, and paying it, the difference between an audit and a review is not necessarily indicative of a fraud or whatever that people want assurances for.
Correct. And I mean, you don't have it, right? But so we did say, and this was probably, I don't think it affects any of the EMS providers, but I think it affects several of the fire companies, that if their annual revenue is less than 500, we're requiring a comprehensive review, it's called again.
CPA review.
Yeah, CPA review as opposed to CPA audit. I don't think that affects you though, because you're more than that. I will say, I mean, it seems in keeping with a lot of grants that are out there. It's keeping in, for instance, it's in line with United Way in this county. If you want to get United Way funding, you have to have an audit if you're over 500,000, and if you're less than 500, you do a review. And
Is it in my new fiscal year, which starts in July 1?
yeah, we've said in the fiscal year, if
Since
you,
I have a system already, it's that was thinking.
it says fiscal year.
2024.
I can answer this. So the way that it's written, I'll send you the resolution, but it's under item 3A. And it says each agency will be subject to this commencing for fiscal year 2024. For any EMS agency whose fiscal year does not match the calendar year, the review is required to commence the fiscal year in which the EMS agency receives tax funds. So because you are going to be receiving tax funds in your 2023 to 2024 fiscal year, you are going to be required to do an audit for year end of June 30th, 2024.
Thanks.
To be fair, like I said, I think that we differ a little bit from our friends on that, but. They weren't going to budge, so we're consistent at least for now, but we have discussed. For the sake of, future reviews, that you may not necessarily need that same level of review every single year. And that's just gonna be dependent upon how this first year goes. I think we're all doing this on a quicker basis than we imagined.
If I can negotiate something on the other side for my next fiscal year, since I'm 6 weeks away from the end of this fiscal year. Would we be able to revisit that maybe?
We can always pass a resolution granting a waiver from that and changing that. Resolutions are easy, ordinances are,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So if you're able to get that, because I think we mentioned.
We do a review.
By the way, our requirements when it's review is you're gonna have a lot more financial reporting to do for us. So you're gonna have to do that, honestly, an audit's gonna be easier. If you're gonna do a review, you're gonna have to do a review and you're gonna have to submit every expense that you're gonna make for every tax dollar.
That we do that already.
Right, and the copy of the receipts too.
We do that already.
Okay,
If you can get
I'm
that,
on top of that.
if you can get
if
that,
you're doing that already, I don't know why an audit would be that
just
much harder. Yeah, alright,
Cost, I would think, right?
yeah, but it's paid for by the grant.
Well, the cost is gonna be 5,000 or 6,000 then.
and let's just say this,
You should have
I
4.
spoke to Bonnie today and because these will be passed, we'll have the ability to have checks by Friday. So,
With that, let's make a motion to
yeah,
approve.
do I hear a motion on resolution number
Sounds like Robert
553?
said it.
Motion by Mr. Loveenheim, do I hear a second?
I shall second.
Second, Mr. Albert, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good job.
Okay.
Good job, Julia.
So that was 552, not 553, but point stands. Resolution 553 is requesting an I-80 611 corridor study. This is basically a request that involves our friends at
PennDOT.
well, right, PennDOT, but also the PennDOT designated Metropolitan Planning Organization, which is NEPA Alliance. And so we're requesting they coordinate to request a study on the corridor because it's kind of at the edge of 3 MPOs. It kind of gets underserved, so.
Just so I understand, I mean, there's nothing, this is just us formally requesting this.
Correct.
Right.
We're not putting any money for it. We're not doing anything.
No.
We're saying we formally in session request that you do this study.
Yes.
I'd like to make an apology to the board. I happened to see Tara Mezzanotte this morning at the supermarket. And I thought these were on the consent agenda, and I said, it's not necessary for you really to show up, so she would otherwise, but.
That's okay, she definitely explained it last time.
Yeah, she did, and there's no money involved in either one of these, it's really her gathering resolutions from townships. So that she has the power to approach New Jersey DOT.
There are 3 things in here. Collaborate to initiate an I-80 PA 611 Delaware Water Gap Corridor study to identify all the safety, mobility, congestion, and infrastructure issues so long-term solutions can be designed and considered. Add the I-80 PA 611 Delaware Water Gap Corridor study to the 2025-2028 Transportation Improvement Plan that essentially helps dictate where federal transportation funds go. And then raise the PA 611 retaining wall rehabilitation and replacement projects and rockfall mitigation projects to the highest priority with funding in the 2025 and 2028 plan, because they're part of the current plan, but they are, I think, the lowest priority that's on.
Here.
So that is that one. Do I hear a motion on
Motion to
553? Motion by Mr.
Second.
Loveenheim, second, Mr. Albert. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Next is adopting resolution number 554, which requests an immediate I-80 curve safety improvement. At present, there's a couple of consensus items, which are the replacement of the missing I-80 S-curve warning signs, bringing all current signage in the eastbound retaining wall project work zone up to project plan specs, and ensure that the speed limit matches the current design. Collaborate with PennDOT to create an I-80 PA 611 Delaware Water Gap Emergency Services Task Force to establish protocol for events that disrupt corridor travel and to ensure reasonable emergency service response, detours, etc. Notify local communities prior to every lane closure within the I-80 eastbound retaining wall and I-80 westbound rockfall project work zones by providing the date, time, and duration of such closures. Stop date, time, and holiday lane closures for deliveries of materials and equipment and adhere only to allowable work plan specified allowable lane closures. initiate the problem statement request to study all the safety, mobility and congestion issues between exit 4 to the Delaware Water Gap Bridge, which was previously requested in 2020, and provide Knowlton and Hardwick Townships with all maintenance and protection of traffic plans for review during the development.
Is that supposed to be us?
Now, they're the ones that are actually,
That's where it's happening.
yes,
Yeah, okay.
all good stuff. And that we also send copies of this to everyone else.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Both of you did at the same time, so I'll second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment. Brett,
As someone has discovered last week that their cage fighting by select small groups is a thing. I was perhaps we could entertain putting together like regular for particularly contentious issues. We could have a cage fight. I think. So I could run the concession stand. Or Castle could be the referee. And we could have that thing.
It could raise money for the fire.
Good idea.
awesome. Thank you. We'll definitely get that on the next.
Problem solving.
Second round.
I appreciate my role in this.
Yeah. Anyone else? I hear a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
Mr. Levin, I'll second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned at 8:03. Thank you, everybody.